Hello and welcome to the Alberta Water Council Source Water Protection Workshop. Thank you for joining us. I'm Alec, a project manager with Alberta Water Council and project manager for the Source Water Protection Project. Today I'll be moderating the workshop and later will help facilitate a feedback session. So we have 4 objectives today: to receive background information on source water protection and why it's important, to receive an overview of the Healthy River Ecosystem Assessment System, or the THREATS tool, a tool that can assist with source water protection planning, to hear about some source water related challenges from a representative from the town of Spirit River and how threats can be used to help understand and address some of the challenges that they're facing, and for the audience to participate in or observe as you'd like a demonstration of some of the functions of the threats tool and to provide feedback on your brief experience with it today. A quick round of introductions to the various presenters of today's session in order of appearance. We'll start off with Steph Neufeld, representing the Alberta Lake Management Society on the Source Water Protection Project team. She is a watershed manager with EPCOR and a co-chair of the Source Water Protection team and a board member of the Alberta Water Council. So she'll give some background today on source water protection and about our project team. We'll also have Trevor Boston, who is an associate and software development lead with Greenland, with over 25 years of technical project management experience. Trevor oversees research, development, and implementation related to Greenland's software platform initiatives. Today, he'll give a quick overview of threats, some of the analysis done in the threats tool for the case study, and lead the demonstration of the tool. And then Steve Jack, who is the Chief Administrative Officer with the town of Spirit River. He's graciously volunteered his time to develop a case study and join us today to walk through some of the water-related challenges their community is experiencing. So thank you, of course, to Jack for volunteering, and we're very grateful that you could help us out.
So this source water protection team was really started with the idea that source water protection is critical, and we wanted to reduce barriers to communities to implement it. And so when we think about source water protection, we're thinking about the idea that the final piece of protection for human health is the water treatment plant and the distribution system, but we can put other barriers to contaminants or pathogens upstream of that water treatment plant. And that's going to reduce the risk of any sort of disease or contaminant getting through to a human who's going to consume it. So this whole source water protection approach is looking upstream. And you can see here on this chart, there's a bunch of different things you look at. Things you may not normally associate with water treatment, like land cover, water quality, water quantity, flooding, different risks that can happen upstream of the water treatment plant and in fact affect the water quality of that plant. So doing this, however, is a different skill set than operating a water treatment plant. And some municipalities or utilities have someone who's dedicated to it, like Steph Neufeld at EPCOR. And what we've done is we've worked with Trevor on using this threats model, which is essentially one step in the source water protection process, and it goes and collates this information and brings it along. So we'll talk a bit about that. Next slide, please. When you start to think about this source water protection plan, you have some very simple components that you're going to need to look at. This is pretty standard. There are different guides out there. And yeah, so you're going to start, of course, with your vision. What do you want to do? And then you're going to have to go through characterization of your source water. And essentially, that is understanding your area upstream of the source water intake. So at your water treatment plant, you're looking upstream. Then you're going to set goals, and then you're going to have an action plan, right? So how are you going to achieve those goals? And then you're going to implement it. And of course, it's an adaptive management approach. So after you've started to implement things, you will go back, evaluate, revise, and do the cycle again. Next slide, please. So the Alberta Water Council has done a lot of work on source water protection planning, as have the provincial and federal governments. And so there are different guides out there, and drawing on that, there has been a lot of information that has been pulled together and shared. And you can look at some of these ones are the Protecting Sources of Drinking Water in Alberta, and there's this guide. they're going to give you what you're seeing on the right here, a very standard, understandable graphic of what we do with source water protection. And although the concept is quite simple, it's that implementation that's tricky. And so when we were looking at this, we're also trying to figure out where are those situations or which components of this cycle is where it breaks down. So the previous work done on this has suggested, I guess we need a few mute.
Adam, you're muted.
Yeah, Adam, you got muted there somehow. We haven't heard your last sort of 20 seconds.
Thank you. You're right. Someone did mute me. Okay, last 20 seconds. So anyhow, go back. I think I was talking about probably this diagram here, right? And we're just trying to identify components of this process where it breaks down and source water protection planning doesn't achieve its end. So one of the things identified was the timely access to data. And if you're a small municipality or utility, it's difficult to find this. Likewise, understanding that data once you have it can be a challenge. So this tool is really trying to address that point of identifying that data, collating it, and starting to understand it. Next slide, please. There we go. So the project team came up with some goals for this project that the Alberta Water Council has put together. And it was essentially to develop a web tool and educational resources, really to provide support, to encourage municipalities and utilities to go ahead and do this. So the idea is that we could come alongside and provide support and encourage them to move forward on this. Assist water providers in doing risk assessment, encourage collaboration, integration. We understand that even with a tool, a municipality or a community or a utility may not be able to do this, but we could connect them with people who can do this. And finally, we want to develop some implementation recommendations, how to move this forward for Alberta and source water protection planning. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project team was made up of a bunch of different people. You can see listed here from different sectors, including provincial government, WPACs, GOA, Alberta Health, Forestry, large urban, small urban, lake, environment conservation, and rural. All those people have put in quite a bit of time on this, and that work has been much appreciated. Next slide, please. So, this team first met in April 2021 and started scoping out the concept of this and what it might look like, went through a lot of review and assessment of different possible tools and developing our own and working with existing GOA tools, and finally found this Greenland tool threats as being the most useful and appropriate for what we were hoping to do. So went about securing funding and got a contract with them and started working with them. The development is almost complete. Today, you get to be part of sort of that final step. We're going to run it. We're going to trial it with people who haven't been involved in its development. And we want your feedback on, does it work? Does it make sense? If you're not familiar with this, is it useful? So those are going to be questions we're asking for you. And we really are really interested in hearing back from you on this, because those of us who spend all our days thinking about this, it's sometimes difficult to get outside of that and understand what it's like for someone who does, 99 out of 100 days doing something else and then still has to think about source water protection. And we're really trying to make it easier and facilitate this sort of work for communities who can't do it otherwise. Our upcoming steps are to simply to update the tool based on the feedback today, and then we'll have a final project. We'll release everything and get this tool out there to be used. So, next slide, please. Yes, we hand it over to Trevor at this point.
Okay, so navigating our threats interface. So threats is a web-based system. So hopefully in advance of this workshop, some of you might have had a chance to take a look and sign up for an account and explore around a little bit in the interface. But I'm going to go through a few slides that will show you some of the highlights of what we've got to offer in our system here. Okay, so when you arrive at our landing page, this is the first thing you're going to see. This is going to give you an opportunity to create a user account. So the next time you come back, it's easy to sign in, and some of the items that you worked on previously get retained within our system. So set up a user account, and when you're doing that, you want to select the Alberta Water Council as your region of interest. That's going to give you tools and geographic area on your mapping that is relevant to you for the purpose of this pilot project. In addition to that, on our landing page, we've got some other items of interest. There's some credits. You can view some of our previous funders and contributors to the project and the development of the tools. You can see a list of modules and some details about those features and financial contributors as well. So the main interface, when you log in, it's going to look like this. You have we built this dashboard here. So the dashboard is intended to provide a bit of guidance and overview. And we've also created a few links here as well to help you in navigating your source water protection plan development. So as you'll see in a minute, there's some tables here that will help you link some of the different risk factors with some of the data that we've got in the system. So you can always come back to this dashboard by going up to the tools menu, and you'll see a dashboard as one of the items, and it will bring you back to this area. In addition to the tools menu, which has the different modules, there's also a map library button. And if you press that, it will allow you to turn layers on and off, just like in a GIS type environment. Not sure my slide is not advancing here. There we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's some tables involved you can use as a reference. So these tables will provide some of the hazard areas and risks. There's a risk factor statement that talks a little bit about what does that mean, and then we've indicated some of the layers and data sets and threats that you can use to address that particular risk factor. So we'll start with the water quality module. This is what it looks like. The value of this, so threats uses an API from DataStream. DataStream has become an aggregator. They're run by the Gordon Foundation. It's a great initiative. They're an aggregator of water quality data across Canada. And they have an API that our system uses to access that data from across Canada. So once you're in our system, we can filter the data and you can sort of dig down into the data that you're looking for in your particular geographic area. We've taken some of the input from some of our stakeholders and tried to make this a bit more usable so that you can get to what you're looking for more quickly. We've done things like adding the top 20 and 50 chemicals that are most common in the database, so that things that are measured most frequently are the things that you see on that list, and you don't have to scroll through all 200 or 300 different organic chemicals and things with names you've never heard of. All right, I'm going to run through a couple of short videos. Essentially what this is going to do is allow me to sort of provide a demonstration, and without having to do the demonstrating, I can talk over top of this while it's running. So this is the first part of that is going to look at setting up this filter. So when you log in here, you're going to see all these red dots. Those are the water quality stations all across Alberta. And let's suppose you just want to look for one chemical like chloride. So the first time you run the filter, in this little demo, it's going to show you all the stations that have chloride. Now we're going to draw a little area of interest box with our polygon around an area of interest. And we're going to run that filter again, and it's going to get rid of everything else. So you're just looking at a focus area. Now let's suppose you only want to see stations with 50 or more samples. So you put in 50, and now you can put in a date range you're interested in. And it's going to filter all that down, so you're only seeing the stations that have the data you're interested in. So that's the first little demonstration. So now that you've got your chemicals of interest sort of filtered down, now we're going to set up the analysis. So I'm going to press pause here for a quick second to give a little more information on this. So this little filter button here is useful if because you've got a collection of stations here. You filtered it initially for chloride, and by clicking this common to all locations, by default, you should hope that all of these stations have got chloride. But let's suppose you switched the chemical after your initial analysis and you want to look at something else. If you click this common to all, it's going to update the number of the stations that are available, so that some of the stations, or if you selected a number of stations first and you want to see stations that or chemicals that are common to all of those stations, you can use this button. If you use the available to any button, you're going to see all of the chemicals that are available to your selected stations, but not all of those stations have that chemical. So when you run your analysis, it may remove some of the stations where that chemical is not available. There's this top 20 and 50 chemicals I mentioned a bit earlier that are designed to give you just access to the chemicals that are most commonly in the database. And then this chemicals for filter stations is kind of a linkage between this initial map filtering. So it limits the number of stations you're going to see to make it a bit easier. So this video is just going to run through this quick. So here we're going to select a chemical, and then your stations. So we have these fractions here. Lots of chemicals come with different fractions. So it's important to, if there's more than one, you have to select the ones that are relevant. Make sure that you get all the data. There's lots of instances in this data set where there's different chemical fractions that are sort of the same thing. So that's always something that'll have to be taken into account. The system is pretty good at helping you find data, but it does assume that you've got a certain level of understanding. All right, I'm going to go on to the next one. So this is once you've got a couple of stations identified. There's some different things that we can do with those. You can group them together. Let's pause on that for a second. So let's suppose you've got a water course and you've got 3 or 4 stations. They've been operated at different times. They're fairly close proximity to each other, and they've got some common chemicals, but because they're from different data collectors, maybe they didn't realize there was a station there before. And so with this tool, you can group them together so that one station or multiple stations in close proximity become one station for the purpose of analysis. That can be quite useful, especially as you'll see in a few minutes here when we get into the flux analysis, and you have to have a minimum number of data points for it to work properly. So here, as you can see, it's grouped those points together, and we can we can generate a graph from those together. All right, so the next one, we have a tool in here that allows us to add guidelines. So we've got a couple of different types of guidelines available. We've got CCME guidelines, the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment. We've also got guidelines that were taken from the Norris, Saskatchewan Water Quality Framework at the 3 different locations on the North Saskatchewan River. So there's a couple of choices, and if you're working in the North Saskatchewan, those are available for you. We're going to explore this information a little bit. This is the CCME website. You can see a list of chemicals that are included in their guidelines, and you can see the actual sort of behind the scenes data, if you will, that gets used in our system to generate those guidelines. And essentially what happens is it's going to superimpose those lines over top of the chart. So here we've got chronic and acute toxicity lines. There's also trend lines there, or best fit lines, as well as the data points. Okay, and then the final video I'm going to do here. So this is our flux module. What this does is it allows you to combine hydrometric station data and water quality data together, and generate a load or a flux, if you will. This is useful because most water quality data is only taken on a infrequent basis. And in order to do long-term analysis of trends, it's useful to be able to kind of fill in those gaps. So this is a tool that allows you to use regression analysis to develop that flux or that relationship between the continuous hydrometric station data and the not continuous water quality data. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're taking the Rosedale water intake as the point of analysis. We're looking for lead as our chemical of interest. Lead has a few different fractions, so we're going to pick the total. And we hit submit. All right, so there's the first chart. It's a typical scatter chart. We've got a few different things we can play with here. We can look at a log chart or linear. There's method detection. We've got a few different options for that, whether you want to use half the method detection limit or remove all of those that are under the method detection limit, or assume that the limit is the actual concentration. We have box plots as well. Takes a couple of seconds for egrets or the flux analysis tool to generate the suite of charts, because it's actually generating quite a few different charts. And you can download that data. There's a little additional menu box that pops up above the charts, and one of the options you got in there is to download this data into a CSV table. And that allows you pretty much unlimited flexibility in how you analyze that data if you want to do something beyond what's available. So this is a list of the available charts. And in a moment, I'm going to flip back to my slide deck here, and I'll give a bit of an overview of each of those. Okay, so this is a bit of an egrets tool. So egrets, this is a USGS R package that we've implemented on the back end in our platform. So instead of you having to be able to use R, and find their library package and install it and all of its dependent libraries. We've got it set up in threads so that you can easily run through that just by indicating what data sets you want to use. All right, so this is a list of the different plots that egrets will analysis will do for you. I'm going to run through each of them and give you a bit of a brief description on what each one does. So this is the estimated daily load. So as I mentioned a minute ago, your water quality samples are infrequent and your hydrology data is more continuous, so it uses a regression to estimate. So the orange line here shows you the continuous data series, and then these points are the actual measured concentrations. And then we can do this for both in kilograms per day of loading and an estimated concentration. These can be aggregated by year. So these points again are your calculated estimated load, and then this line here is kind of a trend line. It's got a number of different features in it that allow you to compare how well the regression generated flux compares against your measured data. So these box plots give you a bit of an idea between the estimate and the measured data. Water quality module. So also this module also gives you the ability to look at residuals, and you've got some of these typical plots that show kind of the estimate against the measured data, so you can see how well it matches up. So ideal conditions would be that all of your estimates would exactly align on this diagonal line here against your measured data. This is another tool we've got in here. This is a trend analysis tool, seasonal trend decomposition using Lois. So what this tool attempts to do is to kind of filter out seasonal trends. So these are things that that tend to cycle by season or by month. So when you look at water quality data, it's usually pretty noisy data. It's not easy to see trends. So this tool helps you to kind of take out some of that cyclical occurrence, and then you get left with kind of a residual or a trend or another line, I guess, if you will, that's had that other cyclical data filtered out, so you can see whether there's any other underlying trends within your data. And this is kind of this is the residual, I guess, after. So it decomposes it into 3 different sets of data. Another tool we have is the Mann-Kendall trend analysis. This allows for you're essentially looking at the change in signal or the slope of change over time. So this again is using our lead example, where we're looking to see whether the overall flux of lead is increasing, decreasing, or over time. So it's showing that the mean is increasing a bit. There's not really a whole lot of change in the minimum or maximum. And then this part of the chart shows you which months that trend is most evident in. All right, I'm going to move on to our spatial analysis module. This is kind of, I call it GIS light, if you will. It does some simple analysis on spatial data. It allows you to clip one area of interest or a data set with an area of interest that's been specified. It works for points, lines, and polygons. It provides, so once you've identified your area of interest, it'll show you the number of features within that area of interest. So whether it's polygons or pieces of polygons, points or lengths of lines, and then it helps you calculate the density of those features within your area of interest. So you can see, oh, there's 200 oil wells, or there's 200 kilometers of road segment or rail segment or whatever within your area of interest. And that can be part of your source water protection plan to understand what types of, and to quantify those types of features within your upstream watershed. So just a few screenshots from the system and a few things that I can point out. So this is the result of an analysis on was done in this catchment area. So this is a custom catchment area, I believe. I'll show you in a minute. There's a tool in the hydrometric station analysis tool that will allow you to delineate a catchment. Once you've got a catchment delineated, you can bring it into this spatial analysis module. And yeah, so this tool allows you to look at the density of these areas. So each of the years where there were fires, so this is a number of polygons. So for 1947, I guess there were 7 polygons that represent different areas of fire. The sum of those areas, so this tells you how many square kilometers within your area of interest. And obviously some of these polygons have space within your area of interest and outside of your area. And then this tells you kind of the density. So one divided, or this area divided by your total area of interest area. And then we can generate some charts like this pie chart below, which tells you what percentage of your area experienced fires and in which year. And then maybe there's another slide that shows the second pie chart, which will tell you of the areas that were burnt, what percentage happened in each year. Seem having a little bit of technical difficulty here. There we go. All right. So we've got another data set. This is the Census of Agriculture. So 2 periods. We've got the 2016 census and the 2021 census. This is what we call a bit of a special case because the table is a little bit different for this data. So unlike most of the data sets and threats, spatial data, the shape or the geometry is really the data itself. Like it's the number of points, the length of lines, the area of polygons. That's what you're looking for, whether if it's a wildfire area or a well site or a length of railway. The geometry of that data is really kind of key.
I might just jump in with a comment at this point while we're trying to get Trevor back. So if you think about your community, what we're doing is this watershed characterization. We're trying to understand what's upstream of your water treatment plant so we can identify and reduce risks, right? So the last case was fire. So using this tool is going to be much easier for you to figure out how many wildfires have been upstream of you. That's important because different contaminants come off a burnt forest than potentially off an unburned one, right? Or now we're looking at agriculture, right? It might be the number of cows upstream of your water treatment plant. That might alert you to the need to do something proactively to ensure you're not getting high loading of coliform, so a bacteria in your water upstream of your water treatment plant. And this tool will not reduce the need for someone to walk your team through how to reduce some of those risks, but it reduces a lot of work. So if you end up hiring a consultant, this collates a lot of the data for them already. If you're able to find a partner like a Watershed Planning and Advisory Council, someone from the provincial government, someone from another utility, this tool will allow a bunch of that information to be pulled together for you to start thinking about, okay, this is what's upstream of us. What are those steps we're going to take to reduce the chance of something going wrong or of something going wrong more severely, right? So that's what we're shooting for here and really trying to have as our end goal. So understanding how this tool works is going to allow communities to do this a bit more on themselves or to reduce the costs should they need to bring in someone from the outside to do some of this.
Andre, go ahead if you have something you want to share.
Hey, yeah, thanks very much. Unfortunate with technical issues that these things happen, but I was wondering if somebody with the project team, maybe Adam, seems to have a pretty good handle on it. Talk about some of the different types of data. So I know Trevor's not going to be able to go through all of the different sort of types that are out there. He's already talked about sort of forest cover and a bit about agriculture, but just wondering if we get a little bit more detail about this, some of the types of data that might be of particular interest to folks, and just sort of elaborate on that while we get Trevor back.
Sure. I yeah, so this tool is pretty good. It brings in a range of data, and that's why as a team, chose it. So it will do geospatial. So we're talking about land cover, right? Whether that's forest, pasture, fields, that sort of thing, as well as infrastructure. So thinking about roads, railways, cut lines, factories, oil plants, that sort of thing. As well, though, it does do some of the more continuous data. So if there is water quality data that is regularly monitored, that can be there. Point data, so when someone just goes and takes a sample of water and that's available, that will be put there. In the side chat, there was a bit of a discussion about, okay, where is this data and how do we find it? This tool, this web tool that's been developed, essentially goes out and grabs data from different websites where people have uploaded their data, right? So if there is not data in your area, that means no organization, the government of Alberta, Alberta Lake Management Society, whatever it is, has not uploaded data there yet. You as a municipality, a water treatment plant, as a person, can also upload to this data stream. It's an open portal, right? So if you have intake data, so you've been monitoring your water, you could upload it there, and then this tool would grab it and find it for you. So the one type of data that this tool doesn't do, that we've had challenges trying to integrate, is sort of the groundwater component, because it is so different how groundwater works from surface water. This tool is not really really set up well to do that. But in terms of surface water, it's going to do all that sort of geospatial, your land cover, what's going on the landscape, as well as some of that water quality and water flow. So the volume of water. So yeah, I think, does that sort of get to what you're asking, Andre?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam. It looks like a really powerful tool. I know we've sort of started this off as source water protection. I know in the background I've had some conversations that sort of indicate that this could become quite a bit broader in time because it grabs all that public data. So really exciting to see this sort of work coming together. And looking forward to improvements based on some of the feedback here. There's a question in the chat here from Melody. How do we verify the data that is being uploaded? That the data is being uploaded has proper analysis, followed a proper analysis. God, I'm not saying that right. I'm just going to read it again. How do we verify the data that is being uploaded has followed a proper analysis? So maybe sort of a QA/QC question on data.
Yeah. And that is sometimes a bit of a challenge with this open source data. The data stream portal does its own work, and the expectation is for those people uploading that they have done at least a QC on it, quality control, so check that they're entering things right, don't have those mistakes. When it comes to some of the simple analysis that this tool does, so Trevor's showing you how it could draw lines, trend lines, right, for certain things like sediment or chloride or those sorts of things. Any analysis needs to be taken with a grain of salt. So this web tool will do very simple things to give you an idea of trends, but we would caution against you saying, using this as a great projection to, we know that next year we're going to have this much, right? It doesn't have that level of power. So that's why we recommend that this tool is used by someone with some background in hydrology, watershed science, water quality stuff, or you find someone to come alongside you, right? And you ask that question. Nathan's in the chat there, one of your resources at the provincial government, right? You can reach out to these people and they'll be able to say, okay, I've looked at what this has done, and yeah, that's a pretty good trend analysis, but that's not a statistical evaluation of what's going on, right? So, and the point of this tool is we don't want to try to burden every small municipality or water treatment operator with, going through and learning all this stuff. We're trying to make it simple for this data to come together and for them to be able to go and get help to understand what it means, right? So this is trying to set us up for the first initial insight, and then we would move further with some support from someone.
Yeah, thanks for that description, Adam. You kind of were going towards the place where my next question was. So I know small operators strain for resources just like everybody else is. You're with a Watershed Planning and Advisory Council group. Other than a drinking water treatment operator, can you tell me about some of the functions that this tool might provide you with support to do as a WPAC?
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and every WPAC's a bit different, but most of us would do a lot of these things, like source water protection, right? That's important. But also when you're thinking about that, it could be a fish habitat tool, right? You can delineate. So when we're talking about that watershed characterization or drawing that watershed, it's a click and point. You set a point, and then this tool goes and draws everything upstream. So all the water that flows to that point. So you could say we're interested in fish habitat from here up, click that point, and you could start to look at water availability. Is there enough water there at the right time of year? What type of parameter? So what's the quality of the water throughout the year? Maybe you're interested in bull trout. What's the temperature like in autumn when they're spawning, or over winter? Is it too cold for their eggs, right? So you could use it that way, right? There's a lot of applications. Or if you're doing a restoration project, it would be very interesting to follow trends, right? So maybe you're doing a restoration project to reduce erosion and sediment delivery into the stream. Maybe it involves a bit of repairing and planting and improving a crossing. You could check beforehand what your values are in sediment in that water course, and then afterwards, right, you'd be able to go back and sort of review and say, okay, we're seeing this as a change. So, anything that would look at a watershed or landscape-based water quality situation, this tool could be adapted to do some work on that.
Great. So yeah, on the quality side, totally see how that'd be really helpful. I'm thinking a bit about the quantity side, given that we've had pretty severe drought for the past couple of years in certain areas. So can you tell me a little bit, and there's a lot of interest in water availability, right? Like Alberta's looking at growth that is on a scale that we haven't been accustomed to. And so just can you talk a bit about the functionality of the tool in terms of water quantity and availability and timing and all that stuff that we know is on the table in terms of climate change?
For sure. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy the case study. Steve Jack with the town of Spirit River has done a really good job and put in some time to, sharing. He's going to share his story. And they're one of those communities really struggling with water availability. So this tool can help you look upstream and potentially identify other sources of water, right? So if there are storage ponds, reservoirs, lakes, that's fairly straightforward. Probably people don't need it for that. But it will definitely give you a chance to review trends in flows over time, right? So if you're always drawing from the same creek, this would help you start that simple analysis. Are these flows changing over time? Is it increasing, decreasing? Is it flashier, right? Is it all coming in April now and none in August? And that helps you plan infrastructure, time withdrawals, and think about how you can access that water that is available. So it's going to be helpful there. And the other thing we think is going to be helpful is to broaden that search, to realize, okay, we have land use issues. Maybe there's drainage going on. Maybe those pockets of water storage on the landscape upstream of your water treatment plant are being affected. And that's the cause of the flashiness or the change in how that water is coming down to you. You could look at that. And then you could also use it to say, well, if this water source isn't sufficient, what's the next available one, right? So you could look next creek over, which one is close, which one has sufficient flows, who's using this. And it would give you that initial scoping, right? It's not going to solve the issue of that water, but it's going to help you understand what your options are and then start those conversations with whoever you need to access that water.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I've had conversations with some folks, particularly I think in forestry, who are concerned about their ability to draw water, particularly in really dry years and as things are progressing in that sense. So really interesting. Just going to read off a comment here from the chat box. The Athabasca Watershed Council recently started looking into uploading data to Mackenzie data stream. So from there, met with us and walked through the metadata requirements, found they were thorough in making sure the data was good quality. So recommend checking into their website to see how they approach this further. I suspect that as this tool gets more attention and gets to be more useful, or not more useful, more access and more widely used, that we'll start to see more opportunities for that sort of thing. So I'm really appreciating that this workshop provides that first sort of opportunity. Just sort of looking at, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit, looking back at the participants list. I don't know if we have Trevor back yet, Alec. I
Yeah,
don't know if anybody else has
he just sent me a message that he's working on a different way to reconnect that hopefully will be better. Yeah, and just one quick comment about the previous question about water quantity. If we do get Trevor back, that's the module. The final module is all about that. So hopefully we can get him back and see it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
he'll
that'd
probably
be
just
great.
be back in a minute. So
I
if there's
might
more
just
questions or anything, yeah.
jump in here because you've read off that comment, Andre, and Melody was asking about this. And we're going to see that particularly for rural Alberta, this data issue is a challenge. There is some data, but a lot of it's not been uploaded yet. Athabasca Watershed Council says they're starting to work on uploading stuff. This is going to be, I think, a two-tiered approach. We need to get people to upload their data to a data stream where it's accessible, and then they can use this tool to collate and bring that all that data to themselves. So yeah, I think it's good that this conversation coming because this tool depends on accessible data online. And in a lot of places in rural Alberta, you may not have that. So we have to look at first getting that data upline, and then this would work.
Yeah, so there's, as I was mentioning, there's two special cases for our spatial analysis, the census of agriculture. So what you'll see in a minute here, there's ways that we can use the filtering to add spatial data sets and then filter according to the fields that we're interested in. So this census of agriculture is one, and the second one is the National Pollutant Release Inventory. That's the next slide. Okay, so the same sort of thing. This has point data, but each of these points has a lot of information related to it. So this will tell you the name of the factory or the industry associated with the particular release. So Canadian laws require that any release of contaminants, controlled substances have to be reported. And when the report goes in, the data goes into this database. So that'll include the spatial location of the release, the name of the facility, company involved, the chemical involved, how much of it was released, what units of measurement, what procedures were used to measure it, and so on. So there's a lot of information in this data set. It'll tell you historical releases. I think our data goes up to, I'd have to check and see. We updated it not too long ago, but this data only gets updated and made available periodically, or maybe every year or two. So, but it's a pretty good record of what's available. So when you're setting up the query or the filtering for this, you're probably going to be interested in the substance name, the name of the facility. We can group it according to whether the release was to air or water to soil. So yeah, some really good information in that database. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a YouTube video. It's going to walk you through how to set up this module and provide a couple of quick examples. This is an older video that we prepared a couple of years ago, but for the most part, I think this is all still relevant. And I'll kind of walk through a little bit about what's going on. So as mentioned, this allows you to collect and merge the data, analyze the spatial data, and it spans all of our area of interest. So this is some preliminary stuff. Okay, so this is kind of a different way of explaining what I was saying about geometric analysis, where you've got lines, polygons, and points. Anybody has any questions, we can probably take a couple of questions through the board there as well. So selecting your area of interest is the first step. So in this case, this is a catchment area, North Saskatchewan. And we're evaluating land use. Well, this is an example using the Census of Agriculture. So dissecting the columns, so the map layer of interest, the area of interest, and all of the ratios that we calculated earlier. So this slide talks a little bit about how that data is aggregated. So in reality, it's not homogeneous, but the way Threat sees it is it assumes that it's homogeneous. So when you're doing spatial weighting, you're going to get a bit of an estimate. It's not going to be perfect. You might have for example, a hog facility that's going to be in one location, and maybe you've got 10, 1,000 pigs in your watershed, but it thinks that they're all distributed evenly, but in fact, they're all in one location. So there's obviously some potential for error when you're making that kind of assumption that the user needs to be aware of how the calculation is being done. And using a delineated area of watershed interest, you can select multiple catchment areas if that's how you want to set up your analysis. And once you've delineated these in the hydrometric analysis tool, they become available to the spatial analysis module. We've got connectivity between these modules, so you can do some of your work in one and flip to another module. It's almost like they're tabs. So when you're finished using one analysis, you can flip to another, do some work there, and then flip back and forth. This little example shows how you can add a mask to your area of interest. This is useful if you're preparing reports and you want to take a screenshot of a map area that sort of allows you to focus in on that area of interest. You can also add multiple data layers at the same time and apply filters to them. So when you're adding filters, you get things like, the wellhead count. So this is a particular field. And in this example, they're looking to show me where there's more than a certain number. It's worth pointing out all these little question marks that you'll see on the screen help you find more information. They've got little tips and things that can help you navigate the system better. There's also the about. You'll see that at the top of each module that gives you a more detailed description on what's happening in each of the modules. Okay, Alec, you can move on to the next one there. Okay. So the last module we'll talk about is the hydrometric stations analysis module. Okay, next. Okay, so here you come into the module from the tools menu. You've got the option to set up a new or delineate a custom catchment. You can do that by clicking the new point. Once you do that, you can either use the click function or snap function, and it'll essentially lock your point to the nearest drainage path or drainage line, or you can go without the snap and it will delineate to the exact point that you've identified. Your other option is to use hydrometric stations. So we've got data stations or hydrometric stations from Water Survey of Canada, and we've also got some from that are operated by the Alberta government. So once you do that, you've selected your area, your hydrometric station, or you've delineated, then you've got your catchment area. And the next thing you can do is to start doing an analysis. So you've got a bunch of different options here when you go down to the hydrologic charts. And this is the list of charts that are available. So Alec, next slide there. So we've got hydrographs. So this is charts, daily recorded station data. That's pretty basic. We've got stacked hydrographs. So this allows you to put two different charts. There's two different chart types, but it allows you to stack hydrometric station data on top of each other. This is useful when you want to see how much water is being contributed from different tributaries on a water course. We've got a predicted flood events. This is a statistical analysis that looks at historical data to see what the return period flows look like. So a 1 in 100 year flow, 1 in a 50 year flow, and you can compare current flows or against those conditions. There's monthly and annual box plots. There's a Mankandel trend analysis, and there's also yeah. So okay, next slide. So this is kind of a mashup of examples from this module. On the far left, we've got we use a Pearson 3 distribution to calculate 7Q or 20 through 7Q2 return period low flow events. So this is a run. So what this does is it's a 7-day running average of flows, and then it determines the return period of that 7-day lowest flow condition in a 2 through 20 year return period. So this is helpful we use it a lot for doing assimilative capacity studies where you're discharging treated effluent into a receiving water course. Here in Ontario, we use the 7Q20 as the low flow design condition that's used to simulate or do that mixing analysis. So that's one use of that. But there's lots of other potential uses for it. The center chart, this is a Mankandel trend analysis looking at flow. So it's identifying months where the flow condition is trending downward and the strength or signal strength of that trend in this particular hydrograph. The top right is that high flow frequency return period condition. So this shows you different return periods and what the flow condition is, and then you've got your time series data below that, so you can see where it exceeds that. I think this is the Calgary flooding in 2013, so you can see it exceeded the 1 in 100 year condition there. And then the last one on the bottom right is a cumulative frequency chart. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I think that wraps things up. We can move on to the next.
There's a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
So one of the questions for you, Trevor, does this capture treated effluent releases? Are those included? And it looks like there's an answer below. There are different media types in the data stream allowed values, and it seems like it's not included in that list from Nathan.
Yeah, we don't have treated effluent unless unless the operator were to to upload that data into data stream. typically it's mostly surface water that's being measured and reported in data stream, but it's possible that they might. It depends on how. I mean, whoever contributes the data can sort of identify what the media is that's being sampled, so it's not impossible. But to my knowledge, I haven't seen any treatment plants that are reporting their data on this system.
Okay. The next question, how granular can this information be considered? For example, municipal land use planning will identify setbacks as sensitive areas around water bodies. Is it possible to address the cumulative impacts of pollutants on these subbasins at the catchment level? Adam says yes. Trevor, do you have anything to add?
I'm not sure I entirely understand the question. This is about the resolution of the data or about...
Catherine, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, thanks. It is about the resolution of the data. So, and not just that, but focus on that information right around a subbasin. So you were kind of showing that we could capture primary basin, but I'm wondering, can you get around a lake basin, and how does that hydrology show in ephemeral streams? So I kind of elaborated in the second question as well. So is the current provincial mapping doesn't show ephemeral streams or the major hydrology, and I'm guessing that this picks up on that, but I was looking for
okay. I think I know what you're getting at. So yeah, all right. So there's the hydrometric station data, which is that those catchments are immediately available. So you can automatically add those. If you want to do your own custom catchment area, then it's as simple as dropping a point on the map, and our algorithm will use a digital elevation map in the background. It uses the Alberta 24-meter DEM, and we've pre-calculated all the flow directions. So it'll generate a catchment wherever you want a catchment generated. It'll also produce a flow trace from that point going downstream. In fact, I find it useful to do both. Like if you've got a particular area, oftentimes it's if it's a little bit off of a drainage area, you might end up, or a drainage flow path, you might end up with a 1 or 2 pixel catchment area. But you can use the drainage line to figure out better understand where those drainage lines are, and then drop your next point right on the drainage line, and then calculate your catchment backwards from that, which can be quite a helpful little trick to get it to give you what you're looking for. But it should be able to give you a pretty good resolution in terms of catchments that you're looking for.
That's great. This is just an amazing tool. I think that one of the things that I find is that municipalities, they will set a setback around a water body and have that as a goal in their land use planning, but then they face pressures from development and gravel extraction or whatever it is, oil and gas, and the pressure is pretty significant, and they just don't have these kinds of tools to be able to look at their specific area and consider the hydrological implications, and the visual tool that's where those calculations have already been made in the background is just going to be so valuable for our municipalities. I appreciate the work that you've done.
Excellent. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
I have a question about, so you've been talking about the 1 in 100-year flood, and appreciate that you've also gone to more frequent flooding, because we do see that in certain areas. Ecoregions are more vulnerable to more frequent flooding, as we've seen. I'm assuming ecoregions are calculated into that as well. Is that correct? Is that how you base your flood mapping?
No, those calculations of return period flows are based strictly on the hydrometric station data itself. So for any given station, we take the history of that and we go back and look at calculate the return period frequency based on a distribution, and that comes directly from the flow data. It doesn't consider any other data.
I see. I think there can be some limitations to that because when we're looking at our hydrometric stations, we know we have some gaps
Okay.
in the basins, and the fact that some of our tributaries are not measured to the same extent. I think
Right. Yeah.
some of that will be limiting.
That is definitely a limitation. There is something we're working on. We haven't released it with this at this time, but we've been working with use of machine learning techniques to try to fill some gaps in existing hydrometric stations. So if you look at the map of stations across Canada, historically there have been many more than are currently in operation today. And we're looking at some techniques that would allow us to fill in gaps and maybe even sort of, in theory, bring some of them back to life with at least synthetic data. Anyways, it might be able to help with some of that, but we haven't released that yet, but it's something we're working on.
Oh, exciting. Thanks so much.
Okay, this is great. Are there we can take another question now if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, we'll move into the case study. Okay.
I'm just checking through the comments here, or maybe you've already responded to some of these.
Yes, I think we're up to date on the questions.
We're up to date. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so the next piece of our agenda is, I guess, to show a practical, real world case study of how the threats tool can be applied to real challenges. So we're joined today by Steve Jack, the CAO of the town of Spirit River, who's graciously volunteered to help us deliver this portion. So Steve will give an overview of the town of Spirit River, some of the water-related challenges they're facing in their community, and some of their plans to address some of these challenges. And we'll follow that up with Trevor, who will show he did some analysis using threats prior to today's session based on some of those challenges to gather data and information to kind of help out. So we'll see that right away. So I'll start sharing my screen and then I'll pass it on to Steve.
Yeah, so if you want to go to the next slide, I can give you a little bit of background on the town here. So town of Spirit River, we were established in 1916. We have a population hovering around 1,000 residents, and then we have another 5,300 people in the surrounding area. We have a G5 area. We call it the G5 of municipalities, and it's Saddle Hills, Spirit River, MD of Spirit River, Village of Rycroft, and Birch Hills County. The economic drivers in this area is oil and gas, agriculture, and other essential services. Most of it's related to senior living, so RCMP, Old Folks Home, Alberta Health Services, and things like that. What sets our community apart? I believe we're like any other rural town in Alberta, but I think what we like here is that we do have the foundation to be sustainable, with the one limiting factor right now, I would say, is the water issue. So that's us in a nutshell there. So go to the next slide, please. We're in the northwest part of the province. We're about 75 kilometers north of Grand Prairie, 95 kilometers east of Dawson Creek. So we're tucked away in the northwest corner there. Our water source is a natural filled reservoir, which is 2.5 kilometers south of town, where the water treatment plant is located there. If you look at that graphic on the bottom left, on the left side of this, on the aerial, you can see our reservoir ponds there. And they are 175 million US gallons when they're full. And the source of water is tributary to the Spirit River, which filters through a wetland complex, and that's where we get our water from. And then we pipe it to the water treatment plant north towards town there. Next slide. Our water issues. So since it is naturally filled, we're very reliant on the climate. We, if drought conditions like we're experiencing right now, we haven't seen any water actually come into our reservoir all year. We had to take a temporary diversion license from the government of Alberta, and we pumped from the Spirit River to help fill our reservoir. But even then, we were limited with the amount of water we could take out of the Spirit River, and based on the timing of the year, the Spirit River typically dries up in June or so. So we had to get in there. Time was of a factor there. So then there's increasing demand from multiple users upstream from us. We like I mentioned, we got a heavy agricultural and oil and gas presence to the west of us, and you know, we don't know the exact effects of the cumulative effects of the users. We don't know exactly what's being used for water being taken out. We know that there's dugouts being built all the time for, you know, oil field use and cattle users and different things. And then downstream of us, we actually have another community that pulls from the Spirit River. So we're impacted by how much they're taking from the Spirit River. So it you know, they have first rights basically. They're able to pull first before we can. And then that's kind of the overview of the source water and the protection that we have of that element. But you know, even in town here, we know that we're losing a little bit of water with the infrastructure, the age of our infrastructure and everything. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on fixing that up so we can maybe not use as much water and use or efficiently use what we have available for us. So and we know that we're short on storage for peak usage and emergencies. So that's another thing that we have to address. But yeah, so all in all, it's the source water is a big issue for us, and our aging infrastructure is another one, but that's kind of off topic there. So future plans. So in order to address this, we are looking at doing a G5 water project where we'll be pulling water from the Peace River. I think it's about 30 kilometers away. And so we're working with the G5, and we're putting an intake in the Peace River, and we'll be pulling water out of there, and we'll be distributing water to the Spirit River and Rycroft, and then eventually get out to the rural areas as well. And that's going to be quite a few years away. I don't know, if I had to make a guess, I'd say about 3 to 5 years to get the pipeline, hopefully. But then if we get a treatment plant, that's going to add on some more years. So in all likelihood, we could be up to 10 years before we see that in place. But so in the meantime, we are going to continue looking at getting temporary diversion licenses whenever we can to pull water from the Spirit River. We have water conservation restrictions in town. We've had our bulk water system shut down all summer. We've limited the amount of water people can use in town. Like I said, we're also doing a rigorous program where we're addressing some of the water leaks in town and replacing water lines and doing what we can to conserve water in that way. So right now it's we're doing what we can to get by, and it's all right. We have enough water in our reservoir probably to last us a year. So hopefully with this winter we're going to have some more precipitation and snow that can add to it. But like I said, we don't have any water coming into our reservoir at this time. So we do need additional information on what's happening upstream from us, and be greater efforts with water conservation.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions for Steve? We're going to jump into some data analysis and such using threats, but is there any questions for Steve before we jump into that? Okay.
I can answer that. Yeah, we don't have we don't have any issues with the quality of water. If we do have any, it would be with the organics. This year we did find a little bit of, since we pumped out of the Spirit River, we pumped into a secondary holding pond, and then we transferred that holding pond up to the main reservoir. And we found that by the time we got that emptied, it was, I don't know, it was fairly stagnant. Some of that water was sitting there for a while, but besides that, we have good quality of water, yes.
Okay, Trevor, I
Okay.
think you're good to go.
Great, thanks. All right, so yeah, we did a little side analysis after talking with Steve. We wanted to try to quantify some of the conditions and things that they're seeing in their watershed using threats. So as you can see in this slide here, we ran a delineation. So I dropped a couple of points. The first time I tried to delineate, I didn't quite catch the area, so I dropped a point up, the first one to the upper left there, because I knew that was in the watershed in the catchment area somewhere. So that once I dropped that point, it gave me this drainage line downstream, and then I dropped the second point kind of in the on the right side there at the lower right, and that I knew that everything, because that's right on their reservoir. So then that being on the flow line, it was able to capture the upstream catchment area. So that's the first step in using threats for most things, because most of you are going to be working on a watershed type geographic area. Okay, so next, that's the tributary that they're pulling from. So in this image, you can see the upper catchment is the one I delineated. The lower catchment below that, there's actually a hydrometric station on the Spirit River, just upstream of where their tributary joins the Spirit River. So you can see that although they don't have any flow station on their tributary, you get a bit of a sense of proportional. The size of their tributary area versus the upstream catchment area for the Spirit River at that location. So next slide. Where is it? Okay, so if we look at the hydrometric station for that on the Spirit River, it's a pretty intermittent flow. They get spiked in flow in the spring each year. But there doesn't look like there's there might be some base flow there, but otherwise it's pretty intermittent. So as I mentioned, this tributary area for this hydrometric station is probably about 4 times the size of the town's tributary source. So you can get a sense that the tributary they're drawing from is going to have roughly maybe a quarter of what you're measuring in the Spirit River gauge station. So I did a little low flow analysis on this using our return period low flow analysis, so you can see what those flows look like on a regular basis there. So yeah, okay, so that would be a tool that, or sorry, no, this is not the Spirit River. This is the Peace River. I was going to say those flows look way too big. Yeah, this is the station that's highlighted there in yellow. We did the low flow analysis there. Okay, next slide. All right, so then we use the spatial analysis module. As Steve mentioned, there's a lot of agricultural activity in this watershed. So we looked at a few different things that might impact water quality in their reservoir or quantity. So we looked at cultivated areas, active petroleum wells, mines, pipelines, groundwater wells. So we identified that there's a large cultivated area. So this analysis will essentially quantify what Steve indicated in his, but now we've got some numbers in terms of proportion. So we also were able to see what some of that activity looks like. Next slide. So yeah, I hovered over some of that Census of Agriculture data. Let's see here. Okay, I guess this is just about applying the mask. Okay, next slide. Okay, so yeah, we did some analysis on cultivated areas. We found some of the different agricultural uses in the area. We added pipelines, we added mining areas and wells, just to quantify those. Okay. And then, so from looking at that data, we can see there's quite a few cattle. It's fairly small to see, but I think we focused on the cattle. You can see the populations, and we did some analysis to figure out the density and what that might look like. Okay, all right, next. This is a land use layer. So we ran, there's data from 2000 and 2010, and we ran both of them just to see if there's any significant changes in land use cover. So our charts didn't show anything significantly different. Next slide. We looked at historic pipeline releases. We just noticed there were a couple of smaller releases in the area, so that may not be an issue in this particular case, but it's something worth investigating if your water source happens to be in proximity to a recent or a longer historical releases of petroleum. Next slide. Okay, so there was a question to Steve about water quality, and we tried to look at water quality for this catchment, but unfortunately there's not a lot of, well, there wasn't any data that we could, that we had access to showing up in threats. So this kind of highlights the importance of making that data available. Data Stream is a really great platform for getting data, into a system and managed, because they've got a database. It's not sitting on a spreadsheet on somebody's personal computer or whatever. It's not on a, it's very easy for really valuable water quality data to get misplaced and lost when people change jobs, and it gets lost on different computers and servers and things. But having a centralized system to maintain that data in perpetuity is really valuable, because water quality is important to be able to see a history of it, not just the current state. So we encourage anybody who's got access to data, who's collecting data or has historical data, to try to get into Data Stream and make it available so that this system can provide more insights when there's more data in it. Next slide. Other resources, we've got a tool in our system that allows you to access a number of different data sources. We're always sort of trying to balance between, do we add this functionality into threats, or do we help people find data and tools that are already out there that are developed by others? We're not really big on reinventing wheels, so we've made a few additional links available. Next slide.
I think that's the end.
I think that's the last one, yeah. That probably should have been in the other deck, but yeah, that's good. Any other questions?
Francine?
Hi, yeah, I'm just wondering if I could get a little bit more clarification following up on Catherine's question with respect to the pathway of the contaminants and how that's incorporated into the analysis. Because water quality risk is usually defined as, you know, your contaminant source. So I see those layers. And then your receptor, which I guess will be a receiving in surface water perspective, your surface water body, but then also pathway. So I'm just wondering if you could just clarify how slope or topography is, or if it is considered in this analysis.
Okay, so the delineation tool we talked about earlier has a flow path analysis. So just to give it a kind of an example, so let's suppose you had a water intake and you knew there was a release of some contaminant somewhere in your catchment. If you were to drop a point on that source location where the spill happened, it would allow you to map the flow direction that contaminant would travel over the surface. We don't have any tools right now for looking at groundwater contaminant transport, but from a surface perspective, we can map the overland flow direction from the point of release to see, you know, whether it intercepts your intake. That would
So
be
if
one
there
way.
if there was offsite watering or healthy riparian areas, or just vegetated areas, is that considered in the runoff pathway of that flow pathway?
I'm not sure what you mean exactly. Is it considered in the type of land cover? Is it considered?
Yeah, because you know, some land cover, you know, if it's concrete, it's got, you know, it's less permeable, or it's more, less permeable, and then others is more
Oh, I see.
permeable.
You're kind
So
of asking if there's a runoff model. So that would consider the amount of infiltration versus the amount of runoff. Is that what you're getting at?
yeah, a little bit like general.
Yeah. Okay. No, we don't, it doesn't have it's not a hydrologic model. So you would need a hydrologic model to be able to determine how much runoff versus infiltration you would get and their means of traveling through the watershed. Our system just gives you it's just based on the topography. So it essentially routes from one point to another, what the overland path would look like if it was unimpeded. But obviously based on topography, but unimpeded and non-infiltrated.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, there's also a question in the chat from Alan. In our watershed in the Crow's Nest River, there are 2 old data sets that aren't in standard databases. The materials that were tested have changed from what's now standard. How difficult would it be to enter the old data into a model like this? Does the lack of some measurements matter?
This is a challenge with data stream. We see a lot of data in their system that is legacy, and methods have changed, detection limits have changed. So there's definitely some challenges there. Data streams policy is to they don't do any data manipulation. They don't change anything. So whatever is put in by the data collector is what gets pushed into their system. They are getting they've got a pretty advanced data entry template that they provide. So essentially, anybody who's got data, they've got to be able to structure it in this spreadsheet template that data stream provides, and then it can be added in that way. But yeah, there's some challenges. But it's left to the data provider to do the best they can to provide clean data wherever possible. So there might still be some value there.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up question. Is there a way to enter biological data such as macroinvertebrate names and numbers into this model?
Into threats or into data stream?
I would assume data stream.
To my knowledge, no. Data stream seems to be mostly focused on surface water quality. Biological data would be a different type of database structure that would be required for that. There are other systems out there that I know of. That would maybe be a good place or a repository for other types of data. But we currently don't have those linked up in threats. But we're always listening for what people are interested in and what there might be an appetite for. So that's a direction of interest. We can maybe chat about that at some point. All right, somebody else has got some other insight that maybe they do have some interest in going into macroinvertebrate data. I'm not sure. I wasn't aware of that.
Okay. Any other questions? Next up is a short break. Okay. Oddly enough, we're exactly on schedule now. So we have a 10-minute break in our agenda, so maybe we'll reconvene at 11. Okay, have 11 o'clock. Next up, we have the demo. We'd have to pivot a little bit because we've been having tech issues so far. So we're going to try and do the best we can. But I guess maybe just to start us off, there is an attachment to this email which has a exercise. So it should look like this. Hopefully everybody can see that. And it kind of gives some instructions and guidance on how to work through the tool. So I guess the first step for anybody that's following along is to log into the platform. So you click the link here, and it will take you to, maybe I'll just log out.
I have it open here too, Alec.
Yeah, sure. I'll just show you. So if you click sign in, if you don't have an account already, you can enter a username, an email address, and a password, and then you have to you'll get a verification email, and you have to sign in using that. If you already have an email or a username, you can just go ahead and log in, agree to the disclaimer, and it will take you to the site. So maybe Trevor, if you want to share your screen and maybe just start with an overview.
Well, sure, yeah, I can do that. So the idea with this exercise is we've kind of gone through some demonstration stuff already. We wanted to get people a little bit of hands-on experience, just running through a quick example. So just from the document that we shared, and hopefully everybody's got this at their fingertips. We just wanted you to go into, like Alec just did, and then start with the water quality module. So the first thing you would do is type up in the search box here. You can type in Calgary and hit the little search button, and it'll bring you into this area. So that's the first step, and then from there we're going to work through the water quality module. So go to the tools menu and click the water quality. Then we're going to go through and filter for you can draw a box around this area. So I've kind of indicated here in the worksheet the area that you can use. So you would use the map filter, drop down here, click on this. You can your area of interest here. And just, okay, and then I think we're looking for total suspended solids and a minimum count of 50. And just hit apply the filter. Should give you a reduced number. Then if you got the same area that I did when I set this up, there should be about 7 stations in there. And then we're going to make for the upstream location, select the Bow River below Bear's Paw and Bow River Pump House. So there's 2 stations. It doesn't really matter what you pick. The point is just to go through the exercise and just to be able to generate a quick plot. So just kind of the hands-on thing that helps with the learning, I guess, if you will. So I'll switch back over here. I'll pick River Pump House and here, and then take a look at this filter. So common to all locations. So those chemicals are common between those stations.
Trevor, just letting you know, it's a couple of people have said that the website has frozen. Yeah, maybe we just want to have people watch you, or
Okay. I guess I'll keep doing a bit here, but that's unfortunate. I know we've got our team is kind of monitoring things here. So we're trying to collect a bit of data. We don't think we've had this many people trying to use it at the same time. So if you're having some difficulty, let us know. But we're also kind of watching things to see how the system responds when we've got this many users at the same time. It's kind of a function of different things. Your internet speed will be one of them, and how well our system responds. But from our testing, it's been reasonably good. So anyways, we'll keep doing whatever you can do, and we'll analyze the data at the end and see how it went. All right, so yeah, you should get a plot like that. You can try changing the subplot types between linear plot and box plots. This is just, play around with it a bit and see what different things you can do with it. I've kind of gone through a lot of this already in the slides earlier this morning, so it's really just a chance for everybody to try it out a bit on their own. So once you've got your plot up, you can, if it's this or some other location, look for trends, look for lower, higher concentrations relative to other years. These box plots are handy for summarizing large amounts of data, because you're seeing the full range of data from each year in one location, rather than a scatter of plots where it's more difficult to understand that. So but then when you're looking at it, maybe try looking at either the highest point on these or the middle point, see if there's any trends that you can identify. All right, so I can move on to the hydrometric stations. Has anybody got any? I'm mostly interested in hearing what what people are seeing apart from that person who indicated they're having some trouble. Is everybody having trouble, or what are people seeing?
There's a hand up from Philip.
Hi, yeah.
Okay,
So I tried both, I tried also in Chrome as recommended, but when I log in, I don't see any of the water quality stations that Trevor has shown on his map. So all the point layer, it's just a base layer basically that shows up. I tried it in a couple different, I just wanted to make sure, am I the only one that's not seeing stuff?
is anybody else seeing that?
Philip, were you able to select the Alberta Water Council? That tab populates it, does it not, Trevor?
It should.
Okay, I can, you mean that back at the login?
Just after you log in, that's
Yeah.
the first thing.
Well, so you did select the water quality module, correct?
Well, when I log in, let's just see, sorry, like, I'll just re-log in. Yeah, so you're saying under the tools?
Yeah, go to the tools menu
Yeah, and select
and
water
hit
quality.
water quality, yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking away here. Okay, yeah, no, it just shows up as a base map, so maybe I'll have to mess around and see.
Well, that's
Okay.
that's kind of strange. All
I don't
right,
want to
well,
hold everybody up with it. I can
no, this
tinker.
is the point. We want to get some feedback here and see what people are seeing. It's often hard to diagnose these things, whether it's something on your computer or whether it's something on our system. So I'm curious to hear whether other people are having the same issue. We might be able to see what's happening on our back end, and if there's anything that sort of indicates what sort of issues might be happening.
Just a small tip, just to help Trevor.
Yep.
So if the stations only show up when you open the water quality module, and also it may not be available when you're too much zoomed out. So if you zoom in a little into a province level or that you'll see all the points, the layer, because it's too many points. You'll not see it up when you're too much zoomed out. Sometimes just I don't know if that works.
Usually you can see all of them at once, but maybe try that, see what happens.
Yeah, I did. But that's okay. Like I said, you can.
Sure.
It sounds like it's probably only me with that issue. So.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Has anybody got any other problems they've seen, or is it mostly working as it's supposed to? I had somebody else saying have the same issue. Okay. So resetting it or hitting the refresh button worked. He says it's working all right. Question about a user guide. Yeah, there is. We've tried to add an about link at the top of each module that gives a bit more information. We're kind of developing this and documenting it on the fly, so sometimes these get a little bit out of date when we release updates, but hopefully they'll give you enough background, and we'll try and update where we need to when we've added some additional features. So take a look at what's there, and we'll continue to try to keep those updated. Okay. All right, so maybe we'll move on to the hydrometric stations then. It looks like some positive response. Folks have been able to get it to work. Okay, so the hydrometric stations module, again, we're just going to do a simple plot. So under the tools menu, go to the water hazard and hydrograph tool and the hydrometric stations analysis. We're going to use the Calgary area again, and we're going to select the Bow River at Calgary for analysis. And then we're going to click on the hydrograph charting and date range. We're going to put in from 2010 to 2024. So let's see here. So here, hydrometric station analysis. Zoom in a bit. So this is the station here. Click on that and go analysis, then it will open up this drop-down box showing the location. You can also hit this little magnifying glass and it will zoom you right to that point. If you've got a bunch of these stations already from previous analysis, it will save these in your account so you can go back to them later on. This is where you generate your catchment and downstream flow line from you. You can generate a downstream flow path there. So from here, you go to the charting tool. You can put in a date range. And select the chart type that you want. So the stacked hydrograph, I think, is what's showing in the example. Okay, so what this one does is it'll show you, if you check these boxes, it will show you the upstream station locations, and they should appear in the chart when you hover over them. There's a bit of a lag here on my side too, so maybe we are starting to tax the system a bit. Oh, there they go. Okay, now we're starting to see them. So the idea with this is you want to try to get tributary areas. So let's suppose we took this location here. Oh, actually, that's not what to do. All right, so once we've got a couple of stations identified, then let's submit. And it generates a chart here. The idea is, so this Calgary station is the dotted heavy line, and then the tributary lines are the filled catchment, or the filled lines underneath. So we can zoom in. I got a feeling I picked some smaller tributaries that either don't have enough data or don't have very high flows. So if you, just going to switch back here because I used a better example in when I actually set this up. So you should be able to see, as well as that, you can switch back and forth between this line chart and a pie chart, and you can see the proportion of flows coming to the Calgary station from these two tributary areas that I selected. Okay, so has everybody had a chance to go through that? Is there any issues or challenges or observations from that? A little bit behind on all of the messaging here. Using Edge was able to refresh. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? So it looks like there's a little bit of page freezing happening, but hopefully people are getting the analysis to work. Okay, Alex, should we move on here, or?
Yeah, I think we're good to keep going. Yeah, there's a comment about tutorial videos. We do have a couple of tutorials and we have some videos online.
Yeah.
Some of
the about sections have videos in them as well that we'll go through. And I think just the process of setting up for this workshop, we've probably got some additional content that we can make available for demonstrations as well. Another page freezing.
Do you want to just show where the about stuff is again, so people can find it if they want to?
Yeah, it's just it's at the top right corner of the analysis panel, and each of the so this just gives a bunch of information about the various features. Okay. All right, so the last section is using the spatial analysis module. The idea with this is to show how we can use the same catchment area that we've used with the last two parts of the exercise. And so I'll switch over to that module. On my computer, I've been finding this takes a little extra time to load for some reason as well. But I also found that I'm using Firefox, and I found that the Microsoft Edge browser seems to not have that issue. So so I picked hydrometric station because we're using hydrometric station. All right, and then the exercise. we're going to use the mask feature. So generate a mask just to focus on this area. And then we're going to pick a harvest area and 2018 mining area. Data layers. So again, it's easy to just type it in. And then the data attributes, just put feature type. And then add spatial data set. And there was mining areas. Feature type. And then just hit submit. All right, so for each of those data sets, it should generate a small chart with the density of that feature in your area of interest, and then there should be two pie charts. So in this case, it's showing that the harvest area is about 2.2% of the watershed area. And within that, well, if you had more than one feature type, this second chart would be split up into different pie wedges. And then for the mining areas, we've got I guess, less than 1% of mining areas showing up in here. And within that, there's distribution of different types of mining. And you got your tables. So I think that pretty much wraps up the exercise. Let's see, are there any questions on this section of it? Receiving no audio. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think it was
Okay.
just the one person.
Okay, all right. Okay, any questions or concerns? Are people still seeing things freezing up, or is this one working okay? Okay. Thumbs
Yeah,
up,
so of
that's
course
great.
you have the exercise, so if you weren't able to follow along right now, you can always do it after the workshop if you'd like.
Okay. All right, so Alec, I think it's back to you with the next.
Sure. Maybe just a quick question. How many people were successful in using the tool there? Maybe just put a hand up or put a thumbs up if you were able to use it properly. Okay. I'm just wondering because the feedback that we're looking for kind of is dependent on people being able to use the tool properly, at least some of it. So we'll just go ahead with what we have for now and do the best that we can. Okay, so I guess the last portion of the agenda, we're just hoping to get some additional feedback from you. This is kind of the first session where we've, really had people outside of our team use it. And, obviously there's some challenges with many people accessing it at the same time. So we'll try and ask some questions now, but we're also going to have this same set of questions available after the workshop. So if you try and do the exercise on your own, or you just want to try something else out, like whatever you want, there will be a survey after the workshop where you can provide us with some information specific to those questions, or you can email me or Trevor or yeah, I guess the two of us would probably be best if you have any questions or concerns. So we had this set up as kind of a whiteboard exercise, but I mean, we can kind of do this however people want. So I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on what the group wants. We can just sort of do a plenary session and have people just speak out loud, or you can start answering some questions using sticky notes and that kind of thing. I think people have been pretty responsive so far, so why don't we just talk about some of these things rather than have people enter information. So I guess our first question, one of the ones that's dependent on you being able to use the tool, but maybe just also based on kind of what else you saw today through the demos and the case study and just the general overview. What do you like? What could be improved? Just maybe someone want to give some initial comments, and I'll just write down as people talk. You can just go ahead and talk. You don't have to put your
One
hand
thing
up or anything.
I really liked about was the ability to aggregate data in a similar area. So you may have different user groups creating data, and you may not know it exists, so that you can pull that data collectively and use it in your same analysis. I thought that was pretty slick.
Okay. Freezing obviously is an issue. Hopefully that's less of a problem when we don't have a lot of people accessing it at the same time. What else do people like? Was there a specific analysis? Was there something that you...
So just looking through, there's one point of improvement I see when you were loading both water quality parameters and hydrometric station data to get the the flux analysis subplots. When you choose a hydrometric station that doesn't necessarily have a span of data comparable to the water quality station, it asks you to select a time period that where the water quality and quantity data line up, but it doesn't necessarily show you a range of dates, so you're kind of shooting in the dark if you want to troubleshoot that. Just a suggestion that maybe some kind of a pop-up or indication of what the range of dates available are when you select a station would help troubleshoot when you run into situations like that.
So just to point out a couple things. So the hydrometric stations, if you hover and click on them on the map, it should show you a date range of when that station has been operational. It won't show you if there are breaks in the station's operation, but it will give you an idea at least when it started and finished its, or when the end of the record would be. So that might help you a little bit with that. The other issue with the water quality and hydrometric station, you've got to have enough water quality points. So we added that feature with the filtering of the map to allow you to find stations that had 50 or more data points, because you need that to be able to run the flux analysis module. So yeah, we hear you. We've had some of the same issues as well. So would that help what you're seeing there? Or is there something else?
It's helpful. It just when you hover, the pop-ups over the hover, they don't actually contain the date ranges on there.
For the hydrometric station?
For the hydrometric station, and for whatever, it doesn't look like it has it for the water quality. You need to select on it and then get into
Yeah, you have
looking
to
at the
click
source.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, just including date ranges in those pop-ups would be fantastic.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for the point.
Just to note, so I unlocked it for everybody, so you can feel free to navigate the whiteboard if you'd like, and move around and answer any of the other questions as we're going along. I'm just going through in order and, trying to start some conversation. But if people want to get ahead of me and start entering some information, maybe we can just talk about the points, if you want to type things on your own. So there's one here, temporal context for water quality results. Just saw annual box plots, sometimes seasonal patterns. Yeah, just whoever wrote that, want to just give a little bit more context and talk through what you were thinking?
Yeah, I guess I just saw annual box plots, and sometimes water quality shows seasonal trends. So maybe that's covered. I just didn't see that.
I think there's also monthly box plots, in which case it aggregates all of the data by month. Would
Okay.
that address what you're looking for?
Yeah, that helps. I guess that would also help with the flux question too.
Okay.
Okay. We have someone who liked the openness of the tool, and see so much different types of data. Okay. We have quite a few questions, so if there's nothing else here, I'm going to move on to the next one.
I just had
go ahead.
One other comment, just kind of might be a little bit of an error, but when you're playing around with the flux analysis subplots, when you choose one of the months, it actually gives you autocorrelation plots or AFC
That's
plots.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that's supposed to happen? So
that's supposed to happen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to put as many sort of validation tools in there as we could. So those are intended to help you validate that the statistical analysis that you're doing is appropriate to the data. So that's the intent of that.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. I was just anticipating a seasonal trend, but that's
oh,
okay.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Did you find the tools to be responsive? So, obviously we had some challenges with that today. Unable to test after trying Edge, Chrome, and logging in as a different user. I still can't see. So maybe for the people who it worked for, what browser were you using?
Seems to be working well on Edge.
Okay, one person at Edge work. Did anybody have it work on Chrome?
Yeah, I had it work on Chrome.
Okay.
Those are, yeah, we've done most of our testing on Chrome. I've been doing some recently with Firefox and Edge. And apart from what I mentioned about some of the drop boxes taking a little bit longer to populate in Firefox, I don't seem to have that problem in Edge. Yeah, we haven't noticed too many major hiccups between some of the other browsers, but obviously there's going to be some things a little bit different.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, I guess it's a range of browsers and some people having issues and some not. Maybe if you test outside of the workshop today and you're still having problems, you can let us know and provide us with some information on what browser you're using and so forth, and that'll help us kind of narrow down maybe what the issues are.
Yeah, we can do some diagnostic stuff kind of one-on-one if we need to try and figure out what the issue is. We, on our back end, we can sort of see what kind of queries are being sent to the server, and we can see certain elements of what your browser is asking, so we can try to identify what might be the trouble if you know, kind of in a one-on-one situation.
Sure. Okay. I'm just going to pull everybody to the next question. Was threats intuitive to use without needing explanation, guidance, or tutorials? Obviously, we've provided some guidance today. I think this is probably more relevant for people who are sort of testing on their own without a directed exercise. I guess there was a comment about having some video tutorials. I think we said that some of the modules have those, some of them don't, and it's kind of something that we're working on now, and I think are going to be added over time. Yeah, I guess, does anybody have any specific comments on this, recognizing that, you know, this is sort of an ongoing effort?
We try to make it as intuitive as possible, so the tutorials and that sort of thing aren't your first sort of requirement, but if it's not intuitive, then it's good to know that as well. But yeah, we try to do a bit of both, having it intuitive and providing some guidance as well.
Yeah, and I'll say too, one of the things that we're looking at for the future of this project as maybe a subsequent phase is kind of working with different users, rolling out this tool to different groups. And yeah, I think as part of that, you know, if we do demos with specific groups, like WPAC's working with local municipalities and that kind of thing, I think we'll start to get, you know, more people trained on this, and we'll get some feedback through that process of, you know, what's self-evident, what's not. But of course, any feedback that we have now is helpful.
I think, like, coming from a background of familiarity with, you know, data structures and that kind of thing, your tool comes across as very intuitive from that sense. I'm just wondering if it's if folks who might not be used to working with water quality data are having that same experience, or
Yeah, Adam, maybe you can speak to this one, like how we might roll this out to different users and how you might use it to interact with some other people in your watershed, for example.
Yeah, for sure. And I think once that comes about, as you mentioned, we envision this being able to stand alone, but there are a lot of partners who are willing to work with groups. So you mentioned WPACs. I see Lesser Slave, Red Deer, Battle, at the back. A bunch of us on the call today, and we like working with municipalities, right? So we'll have people who can hopefully come alongside people and get them trained up on it. And it's one of those things, like you said, we're going to have to see how people feel about it. We think it's intuitive, but like you said, Nathan, we're sort of immersed in this, and that's one of the things we want out of this. But yeah, as we push out to more people, we're going to have to adjust and tweak it depending on the feedback from people who aren't spending as much time with it as we are.
Yeah.
That's where I need to go, Alec? Or...
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have next to me up, Alec. We'll get to it.
Okay. So no major comments on that question for now. Yeah, the next question is about specific areas where you would need more assistance using the tool, like videos, instructions, or tutorials. Any specific documentation within or outside the tool that would be helpful. So I think we've kind of covered some of this already. Having some videos, we're kind of working on the about sections. We're going to be working in the future with, training people and that kind of thing. Is there anything else that hasn't been mentioned already, or maybe that we haven't thought of that comes to mind with providing assistance for users of the tool? No. Wow. Okay.
Maybe a different way of phrasing that is there challenges that people are working through right now in terms of watershed management and source water protection, where they're that maybe kind of like in Steve's situation, they there's issues and you're looking for certain types of data to help you quantify or identify how much risk there is, or are there situations out there like that things that this could be used for? Okay.
It's hard to really make because I'm just kind of playing around with all the various features, and there's a lot of really good stuff in here. I'm just very minor points to add where I can. This is kind of looking for more trouble. Maybe we'll have some after I play around with this a little bit more, but yeah, there's a lot of toys in here, and a lot of it is looks really well done. So.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah, it looks like there's a similar comment in the chat about needing to have a bit more time to try things out before they can provide meaningful feedback. So like I said, we'll have these exact same questions in a survey that I'll send out after the meeting. So if that's kind of where people are feeling as if they need a bit more time with it, maybe we can wrap this portion up and hopefully hear from you guys outside the meeting about your thoughts on this. How does that sound? Because the rest of the questions are kind of also relevant to, you had to use the tool. Okay, so getting some thumbs up.
Okay.
Trevor, do you have something you wanted to say?
I'm just seeing the last comment here from Wade. Using the spatial analysis module, catchments do not show up in step 3 in the exercise. Not sure. The catchments are at the bottom of the drop-down box, if that helps you anywhere. Not sure. But you should be seeing the catchments that are like the hydrometric stations. But if you want to contact me offline, we can try and work you through that if that continues to be an issue.
Just one other thing I'm noticing with the flux analysis subplots, the man candle, there seems to be the legend seems to be cut off there as well as the end of the title on the slope plot or the bar plot at the bottom. When you pull those up,
okay. Are you able to scroll down a little bit further in that analysis panel?
No, I've got,
No.
It's basically the flux analysis subplots is the bottom of that panel.
Just want to try, you can adjust the size of the analysis panel, maybe just hover
there.
over the, see if stretching it to the side one way or the other, see if that gets it to resize it.
Okay, yeah, I've got it resized now. It does seem to have a legend. I'm getting colors of red, blue, green, and purple. I'm not sure how to interpret the.
There should be a legend that
Yeah,
goes with that.
let me keep pulling out. Yeah, I'm not seeing a legend with it, but.
Okay, so this is the using the flux and the man candle.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we'll
So-
we'll take a look at it and see if there's an issue with the legend then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to read out a couple last things from the chat. It would be great to see more case studies as they become available from various groups using the tool. The tool is powerful. I think there's an opportunity to connect drinking water system managers and operators with what this tool can do. I'm going to mention this right away. We're presenting to, we have a workshop with the AWWA conference in November, 3-hour workshop with those people, so they'll get to use the tool hands-on. I'm interested in headwaters protection, being able to connect activities such as logging and mining to TSS, etc. seems really useful. Okay, I'm gonna move into next steps and close, and I think that will probably take us to the end of our session. So just give me one moment. Okay, is everybody seeing slides?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully everybody gets the chance after the workshop to use the tool, and we'll take your input, and then the project team will kind of collate the feedback, and we'll determine kind of what the priorities are for updating the tool. We'll of course have Greenland update those based on those priorities, and then our team is going to start wrapping up this project and writing their final report right away. We expect our write-up on this project to be completed by the team in early 2025. Afterwards, we have a review period amongst AWC sectors on all of our reports and materials. We provide quite a bit of time on that, and then we have to, make edits and so forth based on what we get. So we think that through that process, we're probably not going to be complete until June 2025, and then the public release of our project materials will probably be a couple of months after that because we have to do technical editing and so forth. But that's just the team's write-up about the activities that we've done. Of course, the threats tool, through that link, you can always access it at any time. So these timelines aren't relevant to you accessing the threats tool at any point you'd like. Like I've mentioned a couple times, there's a post-workshop survey. We'll put in a deadline for you to enter feedback, and we appreciate your comments. There's a couple other opportunities to see us and learn more about the project. We're doing a remote presentation on for 1 hour on the tool on February 6th, 2025 from 3 to 4 p.m. at the Aquaterra conference, I think. In the Grand Prairie area. I think there was some mention of that area earlier when we were talking about the case study. The link to register is there. There's options for single day or full conference registration, as well as sponsorship and other opportunities. We will also be hosting a pre-conference workshop at the AWWA annual Water Week conference in Edmonton. Our workshop is on November 12th from 1 to 4:15 p.m. You have to register for the workshop itself, which is separate from the conference itself. The cost is $135 plus GST. The link to register is there. And of course, you can feel free to pass on those links to anybody who might be interested in attending those. For more information, we provided a bunch of reference materials, which of course are linked here as well. They just have more information about the project and our activities and some videos and so forth about things that we've done. And you can also send me an email or Trevor as well. You can probably find his email through the invite list and various emails that he's on. Thank you to our
Alec,
project. Oh,
sorry,
ahead.
if I could inject, we were going to add one little more blip in here. This is just about additional things that we're currently working on the development side. I'm interested in hearing what challenges folks are having and whether some of these other tools that we're working on might be applicable. We are working on something to provide additional information on drought and climate change. So we've got some historical climate data. There's a module we're building right now that will allow you to look backwards in time and look for trends in certain climate parameters. We've got some mapping that shows drought conditions historically that could be linked with some of that information right up until, from 80 years of historical data up until present time. So that may have some usefulness to some for some types of use. We've also got a flow forecasting system that's in its early, well, I wouldn't say it's early stages, it's functional. We're not releasing it yet, but it is something that we've got operational right now. It uses a machine learning algorithm, historical hydrometric station data and forecast data, and it's able to project up to 16 days into the future. So it's good for looking at flood forecasting. Stephen, if he's online here, one of my colleagues has been busy with building this thing, and we've been tracking hurricanes through southern US the last week or so to see how that's working, and so far the results seem positive. That's something else we're working on. We've also got a researcher at the University of Guelph who's working with us to develop a module for water quality analysis using remote sensing and machine learning techniques on that as well. So there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. It's outside of the scope of what we're currently doing here, but it's things that we're working on, and we're interested to hear whether any of that catches your interest and whether there's opportunities for piloting some of those techniques and technologies. We'd love to hear from you if you think any of that sounded interesting.
Yeah, Trevor, is there like a short write-up or something about those different pieces that I could maybe send out to the participants here, and maybe they can, as part of this survey, we can kind of get some input on that?
Some of them are still fairly early stages, but conceptually, yes, I can provide something that gives a high level. They're in different stages of development. Like the flow forecasting is operational. The water quality and using remote sensing is still in development stages. So we're a ways off on that, but within the next year or so, we hope to have, or maybe sooner, we hope to have something that's functional. But I'll send you some summary information on each of those.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and then of course I'll pass that on to everybody here.
Excellent.
Okay. Couple last things. Thanks to our project funders, Alberta Innovates. They provided us with $200,000 in funding to complete the software development. So of course this project wouldn't have been possible without their contribution. And the Alberta government, GOA, specifically Environment and Protected Areas, provides us with ongoing operational funding and covered all the other aspects of the project. So thanks to them. A couple of acknowledgements. Adam, I guess you weren't supposed to speak, but thanks for stepping in and talking today. He was pretty instrumental in getting this set up. The Source Water Protection Project team for all their hard work over the last few years to get us to this point. Our presenters, Adam, Trevor, Steve, and then of course all of you for participating and providing feedback today, and any online viewers that we might have in the future. So thank you to everybody. Any final questions, comments, concerns? Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you for joining us. and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.